This is a really fragile angle to have this camera on. I hope it doesn't fall over while I'm recording this. Really early in this channel's life, I used to do these videos like right out of the movie theater, where I'd turn a camera on and start talking just about what I just saw, kind of give initial thoughts. Far from an original idea, I know, but I liked doing them, and I don't really know why I stopped, because right after seeing a movie is almost when I'm most talkative about that movie. I think the main thing was just having a change of opinion. Like, like a movie will sit on me and my perspective on it will either change positively or change negatively, but, you know, that first initial response isn't a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to capture, I don't feel, and it's a good way to talk about more movies easier, because I want to keep talking about movies. But I'm so focused on so many different projects. Luckily, this Oscars video that's finally going to come out, we cover a lot. I saw every Best Picture nominee, and I get to, me and Matt and Zach, we cover all of them. So that'll be fun. But anyways, Bob's Burgers, the movie. Let's actually talk about that and not just ramble for over a minute. I just got out of the theaters from seeing it. I'm still in the parking lot, and I was genuinely charmed and won over by it. I thought it was a very funny movie. I thought it was very charming. I thought the music was catchy. The songs in it were very catchy, but they were like kind of two of them. There's only three songs in the movie, and then like if you want to count the one at the end, go for it. But there's not really a lot of lyrics in terms of like songs of lyrics. I think the first two sound very similar to one another. The first song I really enjoyed. The second one almost sounds like a reprise of the song from the opening, but I don't think it is. And then there's like a song somewhere near the climax that's really over the top and goofy, but I loved it. Bob's Burgers kind of has this like energy to the music where it's like the singing voices aren't really what would be considered traditionally good singing voices. They have tons of flaws. They're constantly like off note or sound weird. Because it's these very cartoonish characters. Like, if you listen to any of the characters on Bob's Burgers, you're not going to really think of pleasant singing voice, but that is the charm of the music that's both in this movie and on the show. I just kind of wish with it being marketed as a comedy musical, maybe it wasn't marketed, maybe that's just Google saying that. It was listed as musical comedy, which technically it is. It does have songs in it. I was expecting more than 3. There was multiple times where I'm like, oh, one's about to start, and then it didn't. I think that was like not necessarily a disappointment, just kind of something that caught me off guard and something that might disappoint someone else. For me, Bob's Burgers, I love the songs, but I also like the main thing I'm there for is just, you know, the characters and the funny dialogue, and that's what the movie focuses on, and I liked it for that. I feel like the plot of this episode this movie almost feels like a standard episode plot. Like there's a little bit more going on. There's a kind of a cinematic story going on, but it feels like the show has done episodes like this before, so it's nothing really special. Where in the Simpsons movie, although I do like this more than the Simpsons movie, I think, but the Simpsons movie had like a big thing where the entire town was against the Simpsons family. That was something that had not happened in the show yet. Marge and Homer split up in the Simpsons movie near the end. That was something that had not happened in the show yet, at least not to that degree, you know, to that degree where they were playing it that seriously. My friend Chris actually sent me a very good video on that scene, actually. I like the Simpsons movie. I feel like it came out at a time when the Simpsons had already been a bad show for like 10 years, and Bob's Burgers, from what I understand, is still very good. I'm like a couple seasons behind, but I think I was watching season 8 or 9 last time I was watching it, which wasn't too long ago, and so I think I'm like 2 or 3 seasons behind, but season 8, where I was at, I was still laughing, I was still enjoying the show. So I feel like Bob's Burgers movie came out while they're still at a high point for the series, while the series is still enjoyable. Where the Simpsons, if they would have made their movie like 10, maybe 15 years sooner, I think it would have been amazing. For what the Simpsons movie is, I like it, and I like the story kind of has like a grand feel to it. Where again, Bob's Burgers, I almost feel like this movie has a lot of similarities, a lot of parallels to the 2-parter episode, The Doc, where I think that's the episode where... It's not the episode where Felix is introduced, but it's an episode where Felix is a villain. They have the nice things are nice song and the bad things are bad song within those first 2 parts. Yeah, this movie feels very similar to that two-parter, actually, in a lot of ways. And it's different enough. It's not like just a retelling of that, but I think if you watch this movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. So in terms of telling like a really big and grand story with these characters, it doesn't do that. But at the same time, you have to ask yourself, do you want that from Bob's Burgers? And I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that this movie understood, like, it feels like an episode of the show, but I say that in a good way, where the Simpsons movie need like these big emotional beats between Homer and Marge and Homer and Bart. This movie has that, but it plays it very tame. Like, there are, like, Bob and Louise throughout the movie, they kind of have this thing where Bob and Linda throughout the movie, they kind of have this thing where Linda is trying to, like, pep him up, as she does in the show, and just constantly have this positive attitude. And there's this scene at the end of the movie where Bob is like, oh my god, he's like, this is what you deal with every single day, like, because Linda's losing hope in a certain scene. It's like, this is what you deal with every single day. And it's like, all right, you know what, I'm gonna have the positive attitude right now. And it's like, a lot of movies would take this as like a big emotional moment where like there's dramatic music playing and it's sappy and there's this big speech, but it really does have the same pacing that an episode of the show would, where it's almost being played off as a laugh, where Bob is now trying to be the positive one. And I like that. I like that it's not forcing anything, but there is a really, I already maybe said a little too much talking about that for anyone who hasn't seen the movie. There is a really sweet moment with Louise, again, the fucking name's mixed up. Louise's character. There is a very sweet moment with her in the movie. I really like her in this film. I'd say of all the characters, if you had to pick one family member to say the movie was about, Louise is the main character. I don't think that would be a surprise to anyone, even with the movie being called Bob's Burgers. Louise is kind of, you know, I think she's the fan favorite. I think she's the character that, you know, warrants the most. She's like one of the most emotional characters. She's like the least one beat of the family. Not to say that the other, I love all five of the main characters. But Gene, you normally kind of get his sarcasm. That's kind of his bit. He's just constantly saying stuff very sarcastically. When I first saw that show, I like misinterpret that as like complete stupidity. Gene was just stupid, but no, he's just, every single remark he has to something is something incredibly sarcastic and smartass. You know, Tina, you know, has the really like deep monotone voice, and she's like just being a nervous teenager. Linda's over enthusiastic. Bob is very like calm and almost just seems unhappy all the time. Louise, it kind of feels like there's a lot more to her character. There's a lot more to work with. And again, that's not to badmouth the other four. I love all four of them, but making the film focus on Louise was a good call. Bob and Linda almost have, that's funny, they have like the side story of the movie. Eventually the story is intertwined, but like you have Bob, Linda, and Teddy, and then you have the three kids, and the focus is definitely on the three kids, with Bob's story more so just being something on the side, but it works the entire time. And that's again what I'm talking about with this movie almost feeling like an episode of the show, because it doesn't seem like it's that worried about pushing Bob to the side like a normal episode of the show would. It doesn't feel like it has to be this grand thing where every character on the show is involved. They do shove a lot of the show's characters in, but it never felt forced. It felt like they knew which ones they needed to focus on. Let me put it this way: if you love if you love Mr. Fischoeder and his brother Felix, they're huge. They're a huge focus in this movie. But if you're a fan of like the kids in the school that, you know, Louise, Gene, and Tina go to school with, yeah, no, they don't really appear in it too much. Jimmy Jr. appears in it a decent bit. He has a couple of scenes. But like Zeke, the two twins, the two blonde girls, I always forget their names, they're not as involved. They have clips, they have lines, but they're, you know, more so they're just for like a joke or two in the movie. Where like Mr. Fischoeder plays an actually big part in the story and has a lot of lines. And yeah, I like Mr. Fischoeder. I think it works. But yeah, I guess like, this might be why I stopped making these videos, but basically, that's what I'm saying when I say it feels like an episode of the show, just because it really felt like it could be any standard episode, but because it's a movie, they can do nicer things with the animation, they can go grander with the songs, and they can spend more time on the characters. We can like fit more in. and it leads into a really good payoff. I think the ending of this movie is fantastic, but the entire experience was enjoyable. The entire experience was very funny. When I say the music was catchy, I'm not just, I was actually bringing this up earlier. It's not just that the songs are catchy. I think the score is really catchy. Like, the score is very memorable, and that's honestly, not something that happens too much in these, like, film adaptations of like a TV show. Like, normally the music is not something I'm thinking about too hard. But I think the Bob's Burgers movie had really solid music to go with it. So yeah, I guess, like, just as a first thoughts thing, I don't have a single problem with it really, aside from maybe more songs, maybe. But again, I feel like that's almost more of like an issue on building expectations, rather than it is like, oh, this movie needed more songs, like another song was going to make the movie better. It caught me off guard, and like I said, it didn't necessarily disappoint me, but I think it could disappoint someone expecting like a full-blown musical from it, because the songs are really spread out and you don't really get a lot. But I think it's fine. I think that they found a good balance for all that. And even though the film definitely chooses to focus on Luis, I think Jean, Tina, Linda, and Bob are also, honestly, Teddy too, like, they are focused on properly. Each of them gets a satisfying amount of screen time. Each of them has a satisfying arc to go through. Each of them has some like really funny and likable moments for these characters. If you like seeing them, you're gonna get what you want out of this. But the decision to focus on Luis, again, just definitely the right call. But the other characters have an arc too. Tina has something she has to go through by the end, so does Jean. A lot of this movie is built around insecurities for like the three kids. And I like how at the beginning of the movie, you know, you kind of have all three of them having like this fantasy in their head. And one plays after the other. They're not just like, okay, we're only going to give Luis the scene where she's like dealing with her own like inner monologue, her own like fears. They give one to Tina and Jean too, and I think it works really well just because the film, even though they're not the ones going through the big arc, the film does treat them like they're important. The film does acknowledge their significance to the show and knows that you will want to see something like that. So yeah, I think that's all I need to say about it. I think this was a very convoluted and all over the place video, but I'll try to do more of these. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, I don't know how I'd rate it. Maybe like an 8 out of 10. It's for what it's trying to be, it's great. I'm not gonna act like, you know, it's one of my favorite movies of all time now. I try to be selective with what I'll give like a perfect score, you know, but I really didn't have any issues with it. Oh, one more thing I wanted to point out, just in terms of like animation upgrades. I remember seeing the trailers, I was like, oh yeah, this is such an upgrade. They added shade into it. Like, I see so many film adaptations of like an animated show where the big upgrade in animation is they added shade in, and adding shade in is good. But it's just, to me, it's like almost kind of cheap sometimes. Like, yeah, it's harder to do. It adds steps to the animation, but it's just like, yeah, I mean, this doesn't look that, I didn't think the movie looked that cinematic from the trailers. After watching it, holy shit, it's not just shading. The fucking lighting in this movie was excellent. If a character's like not facing the sun, they're darkened, you know, they get the fucking lighting down. They use the lighting efficiently throughout the entire movie. They do some really cool things with it. They actually did make a very cinematic experience with this movie. The only thing I'll say is there's this chase scene near the end, and I think that was a little too dark. I think, you know, it made sense in the context of the scene for it to be dark, but for a, you know, aesthetically pleasing experience, you do want to be able to see what's going on more. You do want to be able to see the things going on around you. So sometimes you have to communicate that a room is dark to the characters, but it should be like, you can tell that they are having a hard time seeing, but you still need to be able to see what's going on to enjoy it from a visual perspective. And it's weird because there's a scene after that where it does feel like it understands that, because it's like clearly the scene's supposed to be pitch black for the other characters, so they're not seeing anything, but we can still see them. So it seems like they understood that in one scene and not in another. Or maybe our theater just sucks. Maybe the screen was dark. I don't know. I'll see what it looks like on digital when it comes out. But yeah, I definitely want to watch this one again. I absolutely loved it. Maybe I'll force it as a movie night if Mitzi, Chris, and Matt don't get their asses to watching it soon. Although I don't even know if they like the show. And yeah, it kind of got me to want to start watching episodes of the show again. Definitely a good experience. Would recommend, especially if you're a fan of the show. But I think there is something for a first timer too, because again, these are great characters and they're funny, and it does, like, there's certain things you're gonna understand a lot better if you watch the show, but I don't think it's impossible. It's not impossible to follow the movie without watching the show. I think you could if you're like, you're going with a couple friends and one of them hasn't seen the show, they could still potentially enjoy the movie. Anyways, that's enough rambling for now. Sorry this video was all over the place, but that's what these are like. That's probably why I stopped doing them. We'll see. Maybe I'll stop doing them again after this. Maybe this bit is retired once more. We'll see.